Hey, well, good evening and welcome back to the Brothas-in-law. I'm Corey Taylor with Michael Bradley tonight. And those of you who are new joining us, Mike and I are both former law enforcement police officers. I was a state police officer for the state of Virginia, and Mike is a retired police officer with 26 years experience out of Pleasanton, California. Tonight we have a special guest joining us, Mr. Eric Muldrow. Eric, I keep thinking I want to say you from Texas, but you're out of Las Vegas.
I'm in Vegas, yeah.
Vegas, that's right. Eric and I met last year. We did a YouTube channel together, YouTube show together, excuse me. And Eric has a lot of knowledge he brings to the table, and quite naturally, he is a brother. And so, welcome to the Brothas-in-law. I'll give him a quick minute to tell us about himself and why he's so passionate about law enforcement, and tell us a little bit about his YouTube channel. And then we got a great show lined up tonight. As many of you know, there's a shooting that took place maybe 2 weeks ago, I think, earlier this month.
Yeah, something like that.
Up in Minnesota. Yeah. Mr. Amir Locke was shot and killed by police that were executing a no-knock warrant. So we'll be talking about the no-knock warrants tonight, and just trying to give you some clarity on it and what an officer's mindset was going into that, what it should have been, and whether or not this was a justifiable shooting or not based on their department policies. So like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you're new, first time checking us out. If you're a regular here, go ahead and hit that like and share button for us, and so we can get this into this algorithm, especially on Facebook here and on YouTube, and get more people actively engaged in the conversation about law enforcement, because we all know the only way we're going to make a difference is be a part of the conversation, not just sitting at home on your cushy couch complaining. Well, it's time to put the words into action. So welcome, Eric.
Hey, I appreciate it, brother. Appreciate y'all having me on.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we've a long time coming, man. We've been talking about doing this for a minute. So finally we're able to get together this week and
finally get together. There you go.
Thursday was a good day, a little downtime, especially in the afternoon for me out here on the West Coast. This is perfect. So yeah, I'm glad to be on here, man, especially talking about this topic, especially discussing this.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, like I say, I think this would be really good, man. I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions about the no-knock warrants, and the beautiful thing about this, our audience will get 3 different perspectives on it.
Yeah,
and I think that's great, because you need to know that we all don't see, even though we wear the uniform, we all don't see things the same way. And I think that's what's up, Tone. Hey, Tone, matter of fact, excuse me, y'all. Anthony answered. Let me put his question up here.
I can knock that out real quick.
Yeah. His question is, how are officers dealing with mass mandates calls? Go ahead, Mike.
Well, for mass, I assume Tone, you're talking about if we get a call to, like, let's say Walmart or something, a store, and they want to call because they're complaining that someone is not wearing a face mask, and it is their policy or their rules to be in their store, you got to have a mask on. Let's say that's the type of call. I assume that's what you mean by your question. So if we get there, normally, Walmart is private property, so they can have whatever rules they want to have. You see what I'm saying? So if you are not following the rules of the private property, the person in charge of that private property or representative of that property can ask you to leave. It is private property, so you don't have necessarily a right to be in there if they don't want you in there. So ultimately, the issue is not the mask. The issue then becomes, okay, does Walmart want this person to leave or not? You see what I'm saying? And if they want them to leave, well, then there's a process of doing that that's called trespassing. We have to identify the person that they want to leave, advise that person that Walmart requests that you wear a mask or they do not want you in their store. We would tell that to the person. And if the person agrees to put the mask on, okay, fine, he can stay. And Walmart says, yeah, that's good, we're good. If the person refuses to put the mask on and Walmart says, no, we want them to leave, then we have to tell that person, Walmart has formally asked us to tell you to leave the property. If you don't leave the property, you could be arrested for trespassing. That's ultimately how that happens. Normally, you do get, it's been my experience in the past, you get cooperation from the customer. You know, they will either leave or they'll put the mask on and complain about it, but go on about their business. But that's it in a nutshell, Tone. So we don't arrest people for not wearing a mask. That's not what I'm saying. The point is we would arrest someone for trespassing on property if the property owner says you need to leave because of our rule and we don't want you there. That's it in a nutshell. Anybody, you guys got anything else to add on to that or a different view on that?
No, that's it.
Yeah, I think you're pretty locked on that one, bro. I mean, you can't really dispute that.
All right. I hope that answers your question.
That answers your question, Tone.
Yeah.
So with that being said, go ahead and cue up this here video. All right, he acknowledged the thumbs up, so he's cool with it.
Hey, real quick, let me give a little bit about my background. I didn't give I don't want everybody just thinking I'm just some dude that showed up over here and don't know, you know.
There you go.
My law enforcement career started back in 1992 after I left the Army. I was a medic in the Army, served 4 years. I started working at a what is known as Westville Correctional Center, a maximum security section of a prison outside of Westville, Indiana. And to give a little context to Westville, Westville is about 40 miles away from Gary, Indiana, and about an hour away from Chicago. And at that time, Gary was known as the murder capital of the United States for multiple years in a row. And Chicago, I don't even think I need to go into detail to tell you about Chicago. So if that gives you any, if that gives folks any idea of the level of clientele we had in my first 3.5 years in law enforcement. Fast forward to 1996. I hired on with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, worked in the county jail for 10 years. And then in my last 8 years, I transferred out to the patrol side of the house. It's all under the same umbrella at Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, where I worked as a patrol officer. I was a defensive tactics instructor, firearms instructor, active shooter response instructor. I was on the crisis intervention team where they teach you how to deal with folks who are in a mental health crisis. I was a terrorism liaison officer. Man, I had a pretty full career. I worked in gang intelligence. I did that that was probably the coolest job I've ever done. Got to do some cool training. I wasn't a SWAT operator, but I trained extensively with them for a good year. When I was right before retiring, I was planning on actually trying to jump on in the SWAT team, but I ended up medically retiring in 2014. Now what I do is I started a YouTube channel, Code Red Conversations. That's me right there on the t-shirt, Code Red Conversations. If y'all can give a brother a like and subscribe, I greatly appreciate it.
Hit him up.
And I chop it up about these topics. I'm very passionate about this topic because, man, I would say especially since 2014 or so,
right,
the conversation about law enforcement has gotten so one-sided and often misguided that and the narrative you hear in the mainstream media sickens me. I mean, only way I can put it is it sickens me, because you have uneducated folks talking about a job that takes a lot of training and a lot of knowledge to truly get an understanding of it. I think all of us can sit up here and say that all the time we were in law enforcement, we still didn't master it. We still didn't have it mastered.
Absolutely.
There was always something to learn along the way. And then you have these evolving. Exactly. Then the laws constantly change. And then so you have to change. Laws change, policies change. So you have to change your tactics. And then now you have these pro athletes sometimes, or you have these commentators with typically no background, speaking as experts, saying what a police officer should have done. And sometimes they're right. Let me put that out there. Sometimes they're spot on, but oftentimes they don't understand the nuances, the extreme details and nuances that are required on a given vehicle stop or use of force or shooting, whatever it may be. So understanding that there's a one-sided argument predominantly in our culture, I said, you know what? I'm going to throw my hat in this conversation. Just like you said earlier, man, we got to get in. And I was like, and a lot of times people don't like what I have to say. Yeah, I wouldn't say that I'm rah-rah police, but I call it like I see it. And I'm not ignorant on the topic. I've been a black man all my life. I was in law enforcement for 20 years. So I think that folks like us, we have the most balanced perspective because we know what it's like to be a black man in the United States. We all got gray, so we ain't a bunch of youngsters over here. Absolutely. So we probably done seen
that's my pet hair. My dog was rubbing up on me. That's what that is.
This is what I say. This is what I tell folks. In my lifetime, man, I've seen our society transform, and I believe for the better. The things I dealt with growing up, the names I was called, and the way I was treated walking down the street in New Jersey. I was in the South, but I got more drama from black folks down South. But when I was walking down the street in New Jersey, and the name somebody just yelled the N-word at me just because they could, or the mockery and the ridicule. I've seen our society transform tremendously. And I'm not saying that racism is gone, but what I do say is that it's nowhere near the issue that it once was. Definitely not in my life. And a lot of people don't like to hear that. So I just try to come in here and I just try to give as balanced an approach as I can on these topics, controversial as it may be, controversial or unwelcomed as my opinions may be. I think you at very least need to respect where I come from because but oftentimes I have an understanding when it comes to this line of work, policing, that a lot of folks don't have.
Exactly.
That's great. That's very well put. And I definitely understand where you're coming from. And Corey, as Corey knows, on this show, we try to give our opinions on these police incidents by subtracting racial issues, by subtracting our emotions, subtracting all of that. And just we try to look at the incident and look at it in a way that if that was me handling that call for service, would I have done that or would I not have done that? You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of times, Eric, people, they get those emotions and that racial sensitivity involved to where it starts to blind them from, well, just look at the facts first in this particular incident, and then make a decision on whether or not that was reasonable.
The reason I brought up the race issue, I don't mean to jump in, to cut you off or anything. The reason I brought it up is because nowadays it's like you can't have this conversation without someone making it into race-based. You can't discuss this, especially if the cop is white and the suspect is black. You can't have this conversation without someone saying that it must have been racially motivated. Yeah. So that's the prime reason. That's the main reason why I brought that up.
Oh yeah. We're gonna get into just that very topic in this video with this no knock warrant.
No doubt.
I'll say my commentary after the video.
We go get because I'm thinking to myself, I need to pull back because I know we can go way up in the deep end, but we want to go ahead and get into this video and break it down. Now,
sorry about that, y'all. Sorry.
You're good. So number one, as you're watching this, make sure you look at this just from the video standpoint. Leave race out of this. Put yourself in the police officer's uniform.
Try to do that. That's all.
Try to do that and leave emotions out, like Mike just said. And let's look at what we got and what we know. And we'll go from there. All right. So we'll go ahead and set this up.
And I'm sure everybody, a lot of people have seen this video, but it's basically these officers are getting ready to do what is called a no-knock warrant on a residence. They are looking for evidence relating to a homicide in this house, and they're doing a knock warrant. So that's all I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna just leave it right there and let you guys watch this video.
Yep. The first part of it is going to be in slow motion, and then it will go to real time. And
can you blow that up, brother?
You can't blow that up.
Is that good?
Same size.
I put mine up. And that was real time. There we have it.
Okay.
You might want to cancel that. It's going to go into something else.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to try that.
Okay.
If I can.
we learning. There we go. Okay. I know a lot of people saw that video on the internet.
Hold on.
You got some echo, Corey?
Yeah.
Coming from what side? Your side, our side?
My side, I got it.
Okay. All right. So I know a lot of people saw that video before this show. And so the big question here is no-knock warrants. Are they still effective today? Are they still needed today? Is it necessary to do a no-knock warrant? Okay. Now,
what's up, Blackjack?
Real quick, the difference between a no-knock warrant and just a regular search warrant, where you have to knock and announce, it's just that. A no-knock warrant, officers can enter a residence without announcing or knocking who they are. Okay, they can do that with
prior to entry.
Yeah, you're right. Prior to entry. Now, a regular warrant is, well, it's just the opposite. They can enter, but they have to knock first and announce who they are prior to entering, and give enough time for somebody to answer the door. Okay, I'm gonna give that little extra something. Now, that amount of time, that's up in the air. That's the gray zone.
Right. There's no regulation on that.
But a regular warrant, you do have to knock, and you have to announce who you are and your intention of what you're getting ready to do. Okay.
Now also too, Mike, on that no knock, before they break that threshold, that's when they're announcing who they are. Before they break that threshold, they don't need permission to open the door. For example, in this case here, you saw at the start of the video, the police officer already had the key in the door and open it up. And before they broke that threshold, they were yelling, "Police, please, let me see your hands." That's key. That's key in a no knock. Mm-hmm. Difference is, like you were saying, I think that's where you were getting to. The no knock, I ain't got a knock, versus regular search warrant. Yes, you have to knock an ID, but both of them, you still need to identify yourself.
Right. Now, what's the purpose? What are some situations that an officer would need a no-knock warrant? What you think? What you say, Eric?
I think a situation like what we're dealing with right now. Mm-hmm. The details were we're dealing with the SWAT team. I believe it was it a SWAT team, or was it like a homicide? Did we know that detail yet? I think
it was a little bit of both. I think it was a combination of SWAT teams.
Right. Yeah. So you're dealing with
cities.
Yeah, two different cities. Right.
Gotcha. So you're dealing with a situation where they're looking for a murder suspect. a murder suspect. So, and one thing that I also want to point out is the fact that typically, and I hope I'm not getting too far ahead of the conversation.
No, go ahead.
But when you're dealing with a search warrant, it's not simply, hey, I think I have probable cause, I'm gonna go and get this dude. There's a lot of hoops you got to jump through in order to get granted the permission. You have to go to a judge, you have to write up a search warrant, and there are a lot of details to prove what your probable cause is to conduct this search warrant as a law enforcement agency. You have to let them know, like, some of the things you have to be able to articulate why you believe that suspect is in that residence. You have to be able to demonstrate that your actions are going to mitigate or minimize the potential danger for other people that may be in there. And you have to be using the best, what may be considered the best available tactic at the time. So you have, but to back up a little bit, and the judge has to sign off on it. A judge has to sign off under all your information that you're given is given under penalty of perjury. So basically, if you're given any false information on this search warrant, if it comes to find out that you falsified anything, you could be looking at jail or prison time.
That's right.
Honestly. So there's a lot of that. So if you have a guy who is, there's PC, probable cause to believe that he was a murderer, and we believe he is in that residence. So we don't want to have to announce ahead of time that he may be in there, because anything could happen. The dude could
he could get a gun and be waiting for us.
Gear up, body armor, could be waiting. He could take someone hostage. He could try to sneak out the back window. Now you have a foot pursuit or a vehicle pursuit, which puts other people at risk. There are a lot of things that go into the decision to conduct a no-knock warrant. And the thing that they want that element of surprise. The officers going in there want the element of surprise so that they can potentially quell the situation as quickly and as non-violently as possible. This situation right here, honestly, without going too much, it's like it sucks.
Well, let me ask you guys this. Now. Let's see where we stand here. This was an apartment complex, and they were up on the 7th floor. So would there be a need for a element of surprise? Why not just do a regular?
Well, I would say just what Eric said a minute ago is, if this is a murder suspect, I don't want him to have the opportunity to prepare himself to use force against me if I'm going in here to arrest him. You see what I'm saying? So I don't want to. I want to disrupt that opportunity. You see what I'm saying? Like you say, the element of surprise. Even if it's on the 7th floor, he could be well armed, well blockaded, whatever you say. Could be hostages up there, like you say. He might take a hostage. So I want to take that opportunity away, and that's what a no-knock warrant would do: is allow me to create this element of surprise, so that I can quickly get everybody in that apartment under control. You see what I'm saying? And another thing is, aspect is the destruction of evidence. You know, you might do a no-knock warrant because you're afraid that if you knock and say police, well, they're going to have time to flush the drugs, like you see on TV. It's one of the things I say that you see on TV. They'll have time to flush the drugs down the toilet, or they'll have time
something
to
out the window.
Murder weapon. You see what I'm saying? And if I'm not mistaken, that firearm that Mr. Amir had in his hand was one of the items also that was listed on that search warrant, if I'm not mistaken. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I saw that.
I believe that was not the case. The weapon was there in the house, but I believe
it's in the house.
Let's clarify this as well. That apartment complex was also where his cousin was, and his cousin was named on that search warrant, on that no-knock warrant, who was involved in a murder. And that's why they were there at that apartment complex. So we have a couple of one comment here and one question. Matt says, watching the video, if I was sleeping, at no point would I understand the police were entering. Well, True. I mean, that's the whole point, the element of surprise. But I think in his case, we're going to assume that he was asleep. Now, this happened, I think, at 6:30 in the morning. So it wasn't like it was old dark 30. And you have to ask yourself, well, at what point when they went in, and remember, they were yelling police, search warrant before they entered the apartment. He was on the couch. So was he asleep? Was he up? I mean, I don't sleep with a gun in my hand.
Well, that and that's the other thing I'll say is, yeah, I don't normally sleep with a gun in my hand. Now, when they saw him, he was wrapped in a blanket, but at some point he revealed that gun in his hand and looked like he was ready to use it. So if I'm that officer, let's just take that situation, just that moment, and isolate that moment. We can argue all day about whether it's a good idea for no-knock warrant. So we're going to get into that in a minute. But let's just take that moment. I have a search warrant. I'm entering into someone's place. Okay. And I'm that first officer in there. And I'm looking for a homicide suspect. I don't know who's in there. And I see this guy on the couch. He raises up with a gun in his hand. Am I going to wait to see if he's going to shoot me? Or am I going to take out that threat? At what point is it a threat to me? Now, if I was that officer, it's a threat as soon as I see him raise that gun up, ready to fire. In that situation, it looked like he was ready to shoot. Okay.
Yeah.
It's always hard to say indefinite because I ain't in there. That wasn't me. But more than likely, I'm going to shoot that guy. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to look at that as a threat, and I'm going to shoot him. Now, y'all know, that being said, now today, we've explained the reasons why a no-knock warrant could be effective, right? But now we should look at, are there other ways that we could accomplish what a no-knock warrant would accomplish? You see what I'm saying? And when you talk about a no-knock warrant going in to arrest a person, okay, that's a little different than a no-knock warrant going in to stop the destruction of evidence. See what I'm saying? Let me ask you, Eric, do you think a no-knock warrant today is worth the possibility of shooting someone who you may not want to shoot?
I think that's
an open-ended question, but
yeah, I mean, and it's kind of, and the way you worded it, of course, you don't want no cop, no reasonable, rational cop wants to shoot an innocent individual, someone who's not involved in the warrant or in the encounter. So you want to mitigate that to the best of your ability. I think maybe there could have been more surveillance, possibly, that could have minimized the risk of there being someone in there. That's a possibility. Again, we're not there. We don't know. They could have done a lot. Maybe weren't expecting anyone to be in there. I don't know. Hopefully, as time goes on, we'll get more details and we'll learn a whole lot more about exactly what went down.
There was. I didn't mean to cut you out, but just to answer your question, there was surveillance on there, on that apartment.
Yeah, like to what extent? I'm wondering. Like, what were?
I don't know to what extent.
Right? Would they have known that there would be other people in there? But here's the thing: even if
again, look at Mike. Look at what they were going to do. Look at the reasoning why they were doing that. No-knock warrant.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting. I mean,
okay,
even
so you may.
Go ahead.
And depending on the amount of surveillance you did on, like you were talking about, Eric, to know who was in there, you still at that very moment, an hour prior to going into there, you knew at that point, an hour before going into, I say, that there were 4 people in there, but you don't know. Since then, 5 other people showed up. You don't know, and
you can't know universally. You can't know everything.
So the whole point of it, I mean, when you look at what they were going, the intentions they were going in there for, right? They were looking for clothing that they were supposed to have been wearing for that murder. They were looking for the weapon. They were looking for the individual, which was his cousin, right? when you go in there, and I'm gonna answer Blackjack 3's question here. He said in real time, dude was shot in under 10 seconds. This was a misuse of force. Well, I mean, if I'm in a situation like that, I'm going to shoot you before you have the opportunity to shoot me.
Right. It ain't gonna take long for me to, it ain't gonna take long for me to get shot. If that guy shoot me, it take but a second for him to pull that trigger.
Let me ask Blackjack this: do I want to give him the opportunity to see him raise it up and furthermore, or he had it like he was going into motion to raise up and shoot again? He already had the gun in his hand. You sleeping with a gun. It's not like he got up out the blanket, ran to the nightstand there and got the gun. The gun was in his possession already. So he already knew he was in a bad environment. Why? If you in an environment you got to sleep with a gun, you might not want to be in that environment.
And not just sleep with a gun in your hand. Because as soon as he raised up out of that blanket, that gun was in his hand, ready to go.
Yeah. Ready to go.
So
I'm not. Again,
see somebody sleeping with a gun.
I want to go home.
Nightstand. You see what I'm saying? But if you got that gun in your hand, and again, I'm not saying that Amir was some big bad criminal. I ain't even.
And he wasn't. Matter of fact, he had no criminal history.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Know is to isolate that moment of if I'm entering, we have to get past whether or not the warrant was right to do. If I'm that officer in that moment, I ain't thinking about whether or not this warrant was right. We got the warrant in hand signed by the judge. I assume that the person in charge of this warrant provided everything that they were supposed to provide because they got the warrant signed by a judge in hand. So these officers aren't second guessing the legality of the warrant. Let's make that clear. They're not doing that. They're going in to execute a search warrant, a no-knock search warrant, and they want to make sure everybody's safe. If they encounter a threat that they perceive as a threat, they're going to take action. You see what I'm saying? So, and I only say that because I think some citizens will say, well, they had no right to enter in the first place. We got to get past that because in their mind, they had a right to enter. They did have a legal right.
Yeah, it was legal, completely legal.
It was, remember, it was signed by the judge.
Signed by the judge. And it's unfortunate that this happened. Let me make that clear. But if I'm that first officer and I see you raise up on me with a gun in your hand and I feel you ready to use it, you might get shot. Okay, I'm gonna just put that out there at the top.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but it could happen. Now, should we reconsider no-knock warrants, though? I think that's really what the meat of the discussion is it necessary to continue doing no-knock warrants when you can have incidents like that? Number one, it's not illegal for somebody to have a gun in their possession in their home. It's not illegal for someone to be, maybe afraid, thinking somebody breaking into their house and they might feel they got to use it. I don't know. You see what I'm saying? That's something to be considered. So with that being said, is it reasonable for this kid to jump up out of the blankets with a gun ready to use it when police were there? Should this kid have known that they were the police? Should this, what do y'all say to that?
Well, I've read somewhere, I watched a video and they spoke about since the officers made entry to when the shots were fired, it was like 9 seconds. 9 seconds went by with them repeatedly saying police search warrant. Now, if you're in a dead sleep, you may not hear that. You may not really be able to understand what was going on. Let me tell y'all something. I'm probably one of the most paranoid dudes y'all gonna find. I got two guns in my easily accessible in my bedroom and throughout my house. There are other pieces of equipment I got throughout my house. All I would have to do is roll over, and I got a gun in my hand. 2 seconds, 1 second, maybe. Easily accessible. So is it possible that he had it nearby and he reached down and grabbed it? Is that remotely possible? I don't mean to get off top. I'm just backing up a little bit because as I mentioned earlier, I'm a little torn by it. Just like you said, Mike, on one hand, the kid was, as far as we know, he was a legal gun owner. At least that's what's being put out there in the news. He was lawfully in possession of that firearm. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the police had a legal, lawful reason to be there. So the two unfortunate, very rare instances met at the same time. Unless something different comes out that we learn and we find out that there's way more going on, which is kind of typical in a lot of these situations, because we typically rush to judgment. We want to execute the police, lock them up, take away all their guns and stuff like that before we know all the details. But I think two rare occurrences took place, met at the same time, and you had this tragic event taking place. Right. So on one hand, I get him being, I understand him maybe not hearing them and responding with his gun. But again, if I'm that primary officer there, knowing that it takes less than a second, less than 1/100th of a second for him to go from here to there, pointing his gun at me and pulling the trigger.
Right.
And I have to make a decision. What am I going to do? Am I going to pause and give how many seconds for my man Blackjack, who mentioned it earlier? How many seconds should he have given him,
right,
to put that gun down? Right. And if you're the primary officer entering in there, what are you going to do? What decision are you going to make? Are you going to wait for this guy, hopefully, to put that gun down, or are you willing to put your life on the line? Right. And that's where we want people to remember.
Right.
What if you're there? What if you're that primary officer on that scene? What decision are you going to make?
And Eric, that's the whole point, of this channel that Mike and I do, is to put your emotions aside and put yourself in that position and see what it is that you would have done. Right. Sabrina says no knock warrants need to be done away with. Too many innocent victims die because of it.
And that's just not true, though. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's not true. And not only that, like I said before, there's a legitimate purpose for a no-knock warrant. Now, do I think no-knock warrants could be maybe restricted a little bit more?
In what way, Mike? In what way?
The only way I'm thinking restricted is if you're going in looking solely for property, for evidence. Okay. Maybe you or no, let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. I'm thinking of it a little backwards. If you're going in specifically looking for a person, and you could be sure that there's no evidence of anybody else in that apartment or no hostages that could be taken or something like that, then you could, knock and announce yourself before going in and give him some opportunity to give up, where it becomes a barricaded suspect basically inside of an apartment building, right? There's no one else in there, but it's a barricaded suspect inside the apartment. You ain't going to just rush in on the barricaded suspect inside an apartment. So maybe a no-knock warrant maybe could be restricted to just something less. I don't know what, but something less. If the citizens are concerned about people accidentally getting shot, I think that's the question we got to figure out. Is there a better solution for?
But I think people also got to keep in mind too, the type of environment the police officers are getting ready to go into. It's not like they're going to Aunt Susie's house and going in and buzzing. You're going into some bad dude's house, right? They were going to look for a murderer, right? He killed somebody a few days earlier, a week or so earlier. I think it was early in about the middle of January. He killed somebody. Like, it's not like he was going to Aunt Susie's house. They were going in to get a bad dude, right? Where there's known drugs and guns and stuff in this house, right? So I see what you're saying. I think that, again, that is the purpose of it, because if I can get you in it, when we do in the military, when we do hits, right, we do an element of surprise. You don't know we're coming, and that's the whole point. We don't want you to know, because at that point, I don't have to. I'd rather just be more comfortable just snatching you out the bed and you still trying to figure out, hey, what happened in my dream, and get you down and cuffed before I'm knocking. Hey, please, open up, search one. Open up, search one. You got time. Get yourself together, get collective, get your gun, get your body armor on, barricade the door, throw the drugs down the toilet, and little Timmy jumps out the back bedroom window and takes off. Like we said earlier, now you got a pursuit. Now somebody's going to get hurt. You just open up. You just open up that window of opportunity for somebody to get hurt. Now somebody's got to run after the dude that just jumped out the window.
Well, that's the situation where I agree that a no-knock warrant is clearly something that would be effective to try to stop something like that. But real quick, I wanted to answer that question that Matt Marks put up there. He says police involved acted as they were lawfully entitled. Let me address that first. Well, in a sense, Matt, they were lawfully entitled. They had a legal search warrant to enter someone's home to do what they needed to do. So to answer that question,
that's what he's saying. I think he agrees
with
with
that. Saying? I'm not sure. And it says the conversation is not the police, but no-knock warrant execution. Yes, I agree with that. When and why in each. I agree with that. Well, that's what we're talking about. Whether no-knock warrants are still something that should be used today, whether it's, we explained to you the reasons why a no-knock warrant can be used, but is that enough for the public? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, Eric? Is that enough?
That's a different conversation, man.
Yeah.
And
right.
I think the one of the issues is, and I'm not making this a blanket statement for everyone involved, but I think oftentimes one of the issues is when the reality of police work bleeds or spills into the public is often very ugly. The things that we've had to deal with over the years. I mean, the average citizen doesn't even want to really acknowledge the reality that it actually exists. The evil I've seen, pedophiles, child molesters, rapists, murderers, people who've killed themselves, you name it, holding people hostage. Yeah, I've seen some of I'm sure we've all seen, between the three of us, we've seen the worst of mankind. We've seen the worst of society.
Yeah.
And the sad reality is when evil men do evil, sometimes innocent people get caught in the crossfire.
Right.
Especially, and sometimes when the police come in there and they get involved, and then because when it's all said and done, had the individual that they were searching for not killed somebody, the police would have had no reason to make entry into that apartment.
Right.
And like I said, and I'm not just trying to act like, oh, it's no big deal. It is a big deal. I'm torn on this situation. I'm not saying that the cops were in the wrong. All I'm just saying, it just sucks because old boy could have been completely in. Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
And like me, Mike always say, policing is not pretty.
It's ugly.
When we arrest people, it's not pretty. It's not going to be this textbook fairy tale. Oh, yep, they're going to no. We want it to be that way. Trust me. When we go, I did I was a part of a special task force a few years ago, right before I left the department, and we flooded the community with a whole bunch of police. And I was with our TAC team, which is our version of a local SWAT team. It was us. I was with our TAC team, me and another trooper, and then we were also with the ABC liquor folks doing a raid on what we call shot houses. And the shot house down here is where people go after the club close and have a party, fish fried, and they sell alcohol there. So how do you think we want to go and approach this? We went dark 30, right? While they're still partying up, and we go in there. Now, this particular one, they was actually in the garage, but we also hit the house too. And again, the warrant spelled out everything that we were going to do and where we were going to go and what we were looking for, right? And so it was the element of surprise. So when we rolled up in there and we yelling, "State police, state police, let me see your hands, let me see your hands, get down, get down, get down." Nobody got hurt. Right? Nobody got hurt.
Well, generally, as we know, most of the time, nobody does get hurt.
Nobody does get hurt. Exactly. But in this case, Sabrina's point, that's what she's saying, because, in the media, that's what you see. You only see the worst of the worst. They don't show you. They don't show you the hundreds of thousands of search warrants that are served every day without incident. Right.
And in this situation, they went in with this search warrant to find items related to a homicide. The only way they were going to get those items is you got to write a warrant for them. The crooks, unfortunately, ain't going to just come up to you and give you these items. So a case could be solved. A person was arrested off the street. How does that victim's family of the guy that was murdered, or whoever it was that was murdered, how would they feel about the cops going in to get this crucial evidence to help convict this person of this crime? You see what I'm saying? Warrants are necessary. Now, we can argue all day whether the type of warrant, whether a no-knock warrant or not a no-knock warrant. We can argue that all day, really. But it really boils down to, are no-knock warrants necessary? I still think no-knock warrants are necessary in some incidents. But like Eric said, I'm on the fence on others. You see what I'm saying? Because it can end up, unfortunately, it can end up the way this one did, where a guy that was not intended to be shot was shot. Now, is this a racial thing? Do you think these cops went in there because Amir Locke was black? No. Do you think these cops would not have shot Amir Locke if he was a white guy? No. If a white guy pointed a gun at me or was ready to shoot it, he gonna get shot too. I'm sorry. You see what I'm saying?
Doubt.
Now, I don't mean to sound insensitive, and it's very unfortunate that Amir Locke got shot. And it's very unfortunate that he happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong thing in his hand. You see what I'm saying? But based on what we know up to this point anyway, to come down and say that these officers should be criminally charged for killing Amir Locke, I don't see it that way. I just don't. Correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but I don't see it that way.
We've had this discussion plenty of times, and we're so quick to want it to be racial. And my question is why? Why is it always that's their first instinct? That's why we always say when we look at these, leave race out of it. Because again, you go in here and saying that, well, you got to prove it was racial. You just can't go in here yelling, because now what if I was that officer that shot Amir and I'm black? What do you call that?
We wouldn't even know about it.
You wouldn't even know about it.
We wouldn't even be having this conversation right now.
Right. We wouldn't even be having this conversation. Exactly. So, just because he's white and the victim in this case is black, now it's automatically racial. Well, you got to prove it. You're not just going to call me racial because I shot somebody and I just so happen to be white and they just so happen to be black. You're not going to do that. You got to prove it. You can't just jump here and yell, he did because he's stiff because he's black. They always do. Black folks like this. You got to prove that. You got to prove that in a court of law.
In this case, in this situation, the items that they were looking for and the person they were looking for was a warrant. Let me ask I would like to ask our viewers, how would they go about getting those crucial pieces of evidence to support this case, to bring this alleged murderer to justice? He ain't been to court yet, right? Alleged murderer to justice. How do you think police should go about doing that? Do you know, is there another way? I'm all like me and Corey, we always say on this show, hey, I'm always open to better ideas. I'm always open to positive change within policing. If there's a better way, if there's a safer way that cops can do something, absolutely. Let's talk about that. Let's explore it. You see what I'm saying? But you got to have an open mind to do those things. Right. You can't just stay strictly on one side or the other. With policing, Eric, you said it the best too. A lot of policing is gray areas. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And sometimes cops, we got to talk about them gray areas. You see what I'm saying? We got to talk about them and say, is there a better way that this could be done? And I don't know. In this situation, I don't know. What you guys say to that?
Go ahead.
I think that if from the outside looking in, it's easy to be critical of the police in this environment, in this situation. But just going off what you were saying, Mike, imagine if you were the family of the murdered individual. That's your brother. And the police say, I think that this dude right here, there's some evidence to prove that he was involved, that he is the murderer. He was involved in the murder. We want to make entry. We want to make sure he doesn't destroy any evidence. We also want to be careful because he may be in there. That might be a possibility. So we want to make sure that he doesn't destroy evidence so he can be tried and convicted justly in a court of law. So we're going to go in there. We're going to use the element of surprise. We're going to unlock the door. We're going to announce our presence once we make entry, and we're going to try to get this thing handled to the best of your ability. I think most people would have a different take on this whole thing. Yeah, what went down sucked. The fact that Amir got shot, he got caught in the whole mix. As far as we know, there's not much more to it. Who knows? Maybe time will come as time goes on. More information, we'll learn more. And maybe he had greater involvement. I'm not saying he did or didn't. I'm just saying maybe we'll find out that it was just an unfortunate incident. But I think that we have to, if you were involved firsthand with as far as with this whole situation, your take would be completely different. And what I think Matt said earlier on, it's not about the police officers' actions. Well, there are a lot of people that are questioning the actions, the decisions that those officers made. They're questioning the decision. Just in the comment section, people were saying, 10 seconds, dude got shot. It was an unjust shooting. Like that time frame really matters when there's a gun in play. It doesn't, because it takes, like I mentioned earlier, I've done research, I've done studies, I've seen videos where you see it's a split second. It's not even a half of a second for someone to go from pointing here to pointing in your direction, and they're pulling the trigger. Yeah. And I have to compute all that. Right. I got to take all that information, observe what's going on. Then I have to make a decision as to, am I going to pull the trigger or I'm not going to pull the trigger? In the meantime, that person could have already had in his mind that I'm going to shoot these.
You already did, because you're
already behind. You're already behind the 8 ball.
And that's the problem we have in policing today, is that you're going to have these officers second guessing themselves, right? In a situation like that, do you really need to be sitting here trying to second guess yourself?
I just saw a video the other day. An officer had
if you do that,
gun at him.
Yeah, if you do that, you're going to be dead. Wow. And you don't want that. Matt says policing is a tough life, and I opted out when I had the opportunity after retirement. Corey chose it, and I did not. Thank you for you all choosing it. Thank you, man. We appreciate that. But I like that question, Mike.
I see you, Sabrina.
I'm waiting on a response here in the comment section. And again, Mike asked, what would you have done, or what do you prefer for police to do to obtain that evidence inside that house without utilizing
let me chime in real quick. Yeah, and Corey, you nailed it, because what Mike said. Just imagine that you knock, police search warrant, or they announce it on the megaphone before they even access. So now I'm the murderer. I'm in that apartment. Now I got time. I can flush stuff down the toilet. I can throw something out the window or burn it. There's no evidence to prove that I did the killing.
Right.
So they take the case to trial. There's not enough evidence. I'm scot-free. I'm still walking the street. I'm still walking the street, still with those same evil intentions. God forbid the next person that comes in front of me that I feel justified in taking his life. All those things. These are the aspects of a police encounter, of a search warrant, that most people don't think about. There's so much that's behind the scenes and all that. So I agree that, no knock warrants, they should only be used. And I believe that we're using them way far less than we have in the past. And during the height of the war on drugs, man, they were booting indoors left and right. They really cut down on the amount of times those warrants are out there in public. But man, we've come a long way. And I just want folks to just think about, man, there's way more going on than just, it's a no-knock warrant. They just decided they didn't want to knock, so they just booted in the door or whatever, and they just went in. There's way more going on in these encounters than that.
Right. Yeah. And also, too, I think we need to keep in mind, too, is like, don't get drawn into what media is telling you. Because, again, before I actually watched this video, there's a particular show that I'm not going to mention. And they made it seem like the police just kicked the door in, knocked the door off the hinges. And then you said they used the key to unlock the door. But you said they kicked it in. They stormed in like the 82nd Airborne and just, destroyed the whole house and just blamed
blew the door off the hinges.
Yeah. And so I mean, you can't get locked into what media is saying. This is why Mike and I always say you got to step back and wait and let's look and see. You got to leave race out of it. Leave your emotions out of it, and just let's look at what we got. You got to look at the facts.
And try to put yourself in that position. What would you have done?
What would you have done?
Search warrants are not entering a house on a search warrant. It's not a 20-minute wait before you enter a house. I want people to understand that. Search warrant happens once you make entry. It happens fast, okay? And obviously it happens fast because we need to control everybody in the house to make sure no one gets hurt and no one is armed in there ready to take me out. You see what I'm saying? So understand that. But let me ask this question this way. As we know, this search warrant was for items related to a homicide, right? Is recovering those items related to a homicide worth the possibility of somebody getting shot that you don't intend to get shot? Maybe that might be a better question. So how would you feel if there was, you knew that there was a risk that somebody might get shot in this situation, or I'm trying to retrieve evidence in relation to a homicide? How would the family of the homicide victim feel about that? And how would a citizen feel about that that's not involved? Do you think that's an even scales of justice, if you will? Do you think that's the even tip? What do you say to that?
Go ahead, Eric.
I think that considering the low frequency of occurrences, if you go in there and you're doing your job, I think that, just like Corey said earlier, the hundreds of thousands of search warrants or even millions that take place over the course of a year across our country, we rarely hear about them going bad. I'm not saying that they don't go bad. We've had incidents out here in Vegas where they went horribly. We had a similar setting where the officers didn't have a flashlight and made entry, and the dude got up and ran to the bathroom trying to flush some drugs down the toilet, and the officer thought that he had something in his hand, shot him. Come to find out, dude had nothing. And then it was all over the news. But I just think that sometimes you just have to weigh the good and the bad, and hopefully your tactics are sharp enough, and that the person on the other side just complies. I think if it wasn't a murder related warrant, I think obviously we wouldn't be having this conversation, because they most likely would not have even needed or requested a no-knock warrant.
Right.
It was the level of the potential threat, and there was a concern for, like you said, destruction of evidence. If this is the dude, based on our PC and all the evidence that we've gathered, we think that this is the guy. And it was enough for where the judge was able to read the search warrant and say, makes sense to me.
Makes sense.
I'm signing that bad boy. Here y'all go. Do your thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that a judge can't be wrong. Judges are wrong too. They're human beings.
Sure.
I've seen judges make horrific decisions. But I think that in the day and age that we're living in, especially in the state that we're talking about Minnesota.
Right.
And with all the drama that they've been going through, I even heard the mayor, Jacob Fry, or is it I think that's the mayor. I think dude's a clown. I did a video on him some years ago. He took away tactical training from the police officer. I forget. Well, there was a certain level of tactical training that he said the police officers can't go through anymore, like survival training, tactical training. Yeah, man, I'm gonna see if I can find that video. I don't know if I can post something in the comments. But I'm gonna see if I can...
away from police
but he's basically taking away exactly. Like when it comes down to, are you guys familiar with Dave Grossman, Bulletproof Mind, Colonel Dave Grossman?
Yeah,
he wrote multiple books. He was coming in putting on tactical training, and they said that we don't want that. The mayor said that I don't want my police officers getting that kind of stuff, because he thought that it created a mindset where they're like attack mode. And, for a dude who's sitting up there with no law enforcement background, who's sitting at a desk, who's not in the fray, so to speak, it's easy to say that. Oh, yeah, well, I don't want my cops doing that. But the reality is, when you're fighting for your life, you better have that mindset when your life is potentially on the line. So that kind of lets you know that in that city, what the culture is. So if you're a cop going in there, you better have your ducks in a row, your I's dotted and your T's crossed on your So more than likely, you would think that there would have been very solid justification for them to go in the first place.
Yeah, and Katrina says to your question, Mike, that that's a risk she'd be willing to take.
I think I agree with her. To obtain valuable evidence in a homicide versus not obtaining that evidence and letting a murderer go free, and then the victim's family who was murdered, what are we gonna tell them? Oh, sorry, it's too much of a risk for us to go in there and get this evidence because we don't want to end up in a shooting or anything like that. Sorry, we don't want
anybody else to get hurt.
You're not going to tell you. Who wants to tell the victim's family that story?
Well, the judge, not the judge, Jacob Fry said that they can't do no knock warrants anymore.
Right.
He had a press conference saying they ain't going to be able to do them. He's going to have to answer for that. Guys like that, the suits, the politicians that sit back and try to hoard and try to lord over the police and tell them. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any accountability. A public citizen accountability and law enforcement is a good thing. We need it. It's a very good thing, because sometimes you can get blinded when you're in the middle of it. It's good to have eyes from the outside looking in. That's a good thing. But too many times there are too many people who want to get involved and they just are completely ignorant, like I said earlier.
Yeah, that's my problem with that, is they have no background or insight into police tactics or anything like that, and they're making these decisions on whether or not these officers should receive this kind of training. That's kind of silly. I hate it.
If anything, you should be spending more money on training, more money on better equipment, so that the officers are able to have more choices that they can use for de-escalation. Now, when you're going in there like that, you're not going in leading with a taser.
De-escalation at that, not at that point.
You're not going in with a taser.
We ain't getting a chance to de-escalate nothing at that.
There's a gun in the hand. Dude, ain't no de-escalation taking place.
You don't even have time to say drop the weapon. You see what I'm saying?
And I'm glad you said what you said, Eric, because I think that's one of the things we're starting to see here in this particular city, in my area, where I was talking about before the show started. These politicians are going to have to start answering these questions, because you start taking things away from the police and you're not prosecuting these people when crimes are committed. I give you a prime example. A couple weeks ago, a young man was killed. Last week, I think it was. In other words, before the young man was put in the ground, the teenager boys, well, they were 18, 19 years old. Before they put that young man in the ground, these boys were already out on the street.
Mm.
Now, with an OR bond on reconnaissance. So what does that mean? There's no money attached to it.
Yeah, nothing. Yeah, we're gonna let you go, and we're gonna trust you're gonna.
You just murdered the dude. Now, how do you think that family feels about that?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
But the sad, even sadder, bro. Even sadder, Corey, is probably their family. They probably elected some of them fools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they're having over there in that particular city. So we have to be cautious when we go and start saying these things. When we see these incidents happen, that okay, we automatically got to revamp the whole thing. We got to do away with police. No, we need to look at what went wrong, and we make our adjustments according to that incident. We look at tactics. Okay,
so we're not saying that. I mean, when it comes to no-knock warrants, folks, I mean, we can only give you reasons why a no-knock warrant would be effective. So we're not saying that, but at the same time, we're not saying that there's no better way that we could do a no-knock warrant. If there's a better way, well, we can talk about it and let's figure it out. We can explore that. We're open to that.
I don't think there is.
That's just the thing. Some things.
I mean, you're gonna
find a better way when you have to have the element of crime.
Right, you're gonna have to. You're not gonna do away with search warrants. So for citizens to think that's the answer. No, that's not the answer. Right? No, you're not just gonna go up and say, "Hey, we like to." You're not gonna go up to the door.
They want to do away with no-knock warrants. That's what they say. We don't mind the other ones.
Well, even still, I mean. Like we've already said a little while ago, you leave the window of opportunity for them to get rid of the evidence. All right, and then okay, now who's gonna receive justice if you're allowing the so-called alleged perp get away and be able to destroy the physical evidence, right? You're not just gonna. We don't live in la la land, folks. You're not just gonna go up to the door and say, "Oh, hey, Mr. Timmy, we're here to collect that."
You have that firearm that you used in this homicide.
Okay, here you go. Here you go. My bad.
Here you go. It's not gonna happen that way. If it could, man, that would be great. But there are bad people out there, folks, and they're not gonna play nicely, right? Police officers gonna do their best to be professional and to make sure to minimize the loss of life, right? When I know I've sat in a few briefings, like I said, did a few search warrants and hits on houses, and I sat in these briefings, and that no time in those briefings do we say, oh, and and this is how we're gonna kill this guy if he does this. No, it's officer safety. Make sure nobody gets hurt,
and we go home safe,
and everybody gets home. We go in there. What is our primary objective? What are we looking for? Let's get that. People are assigned. Hey, you're the grab man. We go in. You're the handcuffs. You grab and do. The other guy's point guy. He's gonna secure this. Everybody has a specific assignment when they go in it. Now, is everyone like that? No, I'm only speaking on the raids I've been in on, right? But that's how our briefings went. If everything is spelled out on who's going to do what, and in no time do we sitting there and say, "Hey, well, this guy does this, and you shoot him." No, that's not how these briefings go. So just like when we put these uniforms on every day, we don't have that mindset of saying, "Oh, how many people I'm gonna go out here and kill today?"
Mm-hmm. Right now that you guys seen this show for our viewers, and you've seen our perspectives on no-knock warrants, I'm curious to know what you think.
Matt.
Number one, do you understand the purpose of a no-knock warrant? And number two, do you think that we should continue to do no-knock warrants after you've seen this show? I'm curious to know if we swayed anybody's viewpoints or opened up anybody's eyes as to exactly what a no-knock warrant is and why they are done.
That's a good question.
And if you got a better way to accomplish that, then let me hear it. We want to hear those comments.
Let's hear it.
You know, honestly, while we're waiting, hopefully somebody will comment. Just as we dialogued and I listened to y'all and we took in the comments and we read some of the comments, it solidified my opinion. I on one end, I still think it's a tragic event, no doubt about it. It's terrible. But then it just helped me really kind of get my thoughts in order about the necessity of no-knock warrants when utilized in the proper context. When you're dealing with something on this level, there is a need for it. There is an absolute need for it. And Mike, like you're saying, bro, if hopefully down the road there can be another remedy, another solution. But right now, based on what we're capable of doing as law enforcement, we're very limited. We can't see through walls and you can't do any of that. And that opens up a whole nother door when it comes to privacy and things like that. So there's only so many things you can do. Yeah. And when you're in a setting like that, I don't see any other possible way this thing could have went down.
Katrina says that she feels the no-knock warrant should continue. And rightfully so. I'm right there with you, Katrina. I think there is a place for them. Maybe it could be debated on more of a certain criteria that you must meet in order to do a no-knock warrant, like based on the threat level that possibly could be there. What type of environment are you going into? Are you going into a house that is, a known drug house, a known house that is known for having, multiple weapons inside the house? Or is it also known that the people in there are convicted felons? Do you know if there, in fact, is going to be drugs, money inside that house? I think if you're able to answer more certain questions that are going to be more relevant to your case and be able to get convictions, then I would say, okay, yep, you meet all those wickets. This qualifies for a no-knock warrant. What do you guys think about that?
Well, also to add piggyback on that real quick. I mean, the confronting an armed suspect could happen whether that was a no-knock warrant or not. Too. Sure. We got to take that in consideration. Officers doing a regular warrant where they knock and notice and enter, and they confront a guy who's armed. The same kind of situation could happen even then. You see what I'm saying? Right. Officers are trained to take out the threat. You see what I'm saying? You raise a gun up at me, I'm going to shoot you. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. They're trained for that. They train for that for years, obviously. Okay. So even with a warrant that's a no-knock warrant, you still will always have that possibility. Remember, we used to say on this show all the time, Corey, officers, it's almost like we assume that somebody could be armed all the time. Okay. And we prove they ain't. You see what I'm saying? Right. So, and therefore, we are going to act with the same kind of same level of officer safety, approaching anybody that way. You see what I'm saying? Until we prove that they're not a threat. Okay. So the same situation could happen in anybody's house, whether you have a no-knock warrant or not, So then it becomes, are warrants risky? Yes. Warrants are risky. All officers know that. Warrants are risky, whether it's a no-knock warrant or a regular warrant. You see
but I think if we're getting into how do we solve this issue with no-knock warrants, I think we need to put more stipulations onto what qualifies as a no-knock warrant.
Okay.
If you can meet
these criteria,
right. If you can,
I'm pretty sure that they already have something like that.
Yeah,
there may be. I don't know. Now, does every state have no-knock warrants?
Well, yeah. Now, when you talk about state by state, I don't know. Right.
That's
California. There's a criteria you got to meet to do a no-knock warrant. A no-knock warrant has to be approved by a judge in a slightly different way than a regular warrant. And what I mean by that is you got to show there's some reason or something that exists that requires you have the element of surprise. You see what I'm saying? So
see, I want to say we don't have a no knock because the one we did was not a no knock warrant. So every state could be different, but so that's why I threw that out there. Well, maybe there should be a criteria. I don't know. Sounds like there is already in certain states.
Tone makes a good comment down there. Looks like we flipped him.
Yeah, but yeah. Tone says thank you for putting another perspective to the no knock warrant. I too was against it at first. Yeah, and that's the whole point of us doing this show, even on Eric's show, Cold Red, is to give you a different way of looking at things. When you're able to put your emotions aside and put race aside and you start looking at the facts, all right, what do we know? Then you're starting to think a little bit differently and shut off social media and the news because they just want you to be angry
and emotional.
Right, angry and emotional. And that helps their ratings, right?
And if you think about it, though, when has anger and emotion ever really helped anybody? Like in any decision you've made in your life, when you're pissed off and emotional, ain't too much good coming from that.
Right, great point.
They want us to operate. There are folks out there who want us, especially Black folks, to operate in that environment, that sphere all the time,
right? Because
that keeps them in power. Right. That keeps lining their pocketbooks.
Right. Right. I mean, it's there are bad things that happen, and we're not saying that policing is perfect. There are hiccups. Is there still racism in policing? Yeah, but is it to the level 50, 60, 70 years ago? No. It's transformed a lot over the years. You still have your onesie twosies here and there, and I can only speak for our department. We did a pretty good job of weeding out those individuals. And I can speak on my office that I was out of. We got rid of a couple of people in there that they weren't racist, but they were to the point where if we didn't act it collectively as all the troopers in the office and bring this to the attention of our supervisors, they had the potential of getting themselves hurt or hurting somebody else. So things are being done in precincts and in offices around the country. You're not going to see it because that's good news. They don't put good news on the news. It's all bad news. Right? Brother. So, but things are happening. So I can say unequivocally in office that I was, ain't no racist dudes. And if they are, they hide it very doggone good, which some people can. But policing is not pretty. No. It's never going to be picture perfect. And go ahead,
I'm
Mike.
glad that we did this show, especially on this incident, because I got a feeling, this incident with Mr. Locke is going to blow up even more than it is now. You're probably going to start to see a whole bunch of stuff. But I'm glad we did this show on this because at least, thanks for the viewers for watching this. It gives you a different view, a more calmer view, not an emotionally charged one, not a racially charged one, just a view from some former cops who have some experience in doing something like that and what we think. So maybe if we flip some minds, great. If we didn't flip some minds, okay. Like again, if you got a better way to address this issue and how to accomplish what no knock warrants accomplish, we all for.
I got a question here from old Mac. Late to the show. How does law enforcement ensure equitable application of the no knock tool?
You mean, well, that's what a judge is for. The judge, we prepare the report, make sure all the elements of the crime is in there, make sure everything is dressed, make sure we, as Eric was saying earlier in the show, there's a lot of information that goes into writing a search warrant.
And it takes longer than 5 minutes to write a search.
Oh yeah, thank you.
You gotta
Just to let
have
you know.
everything and what you looking for, who you looking for, the house you searching,
Where you think you'll find it
where
in the
you
house,
think
if
you'll
possible.
find it. I mean, you got to have every stone unturned in apply for a search warrant, and you report to a judge.
You also have to list the items that you obtain out of there as well, and
That's
it better
right.
match. It
And
better
you
match
give them a
what you
receipt
got on that search
for
warrant.
the items that you retain.
Yeah,
Because typically you'll have the detectives that are involved in the case, and then their supervisor, who's going to oversee it to make sure that this warrant is good, who then hands it over to the judge. So it's not like it's just me, Mike, and Corey got together and we think that house over there's got the drugs, and we're going over there and we're booting in the door. It's way deeper than that.
We had to have prior history that we show evidence that drugs were being in that house by we observed. For an example, we observed this location for 3 months or whatever it is, and this many times we saw this many people go over there and buy drugs or what we suspect buy drugs or sell drugs or do whatever they're doing. I mean, there's so much. And then to execute the warrant, the day of the execution, like as Corey said earlier in the show, everybody's assigned a position of what they're going to do. You have an officer that's in charge, usually the one that wrote the warrant. Okay, there's a briefing before you execute the search warrant to make sure everybody knows what they're going to do, make sure everybody knows what we're looking for, make sure everybody knows who might be in the house, who might not be in the house, any pets, where's the nearest medical, any and everything you can think of to execute a search warrant is in that.
It's like planning a mission to go to go do a hit when we're on active duty in the military. I mean, you spend maybe a week planning a mission, and the mission itself may only last 30 minutes.
Right.
But it took you a whole week to plan this thing out.
Even.
Right.
Yeah.
OMAG has another question, fellas. Can you prohibit bias in which communities it is used in regularly, trying to understand threshold?
I think bias is used, tossed around, bias, equity, those terms, my personal opinion, are tossed around nowadays where they're almost meaningless to some degree. Because in reality, when you're dealing with a potential threat, when you're dealing with a homicide suspect, y'all say you don't want to do I got to bite my tongue. I ain't on my own channel. I'm going to try to abide by the rule, but how y'all do things. I don't want to delve off into the race thing, but OMAC keeps bringing up these terms, and I kind of see what the bottom line he's hinting at. Maybe there's some racism subtly involved. I'm just not seeing how that could be the case in this situation. I just don't see it. If the homicide suspect, if we believe, if we've developed enough probable cause to believe that this individual may have a weapon, or there may be weapons involved, or the suspect may be in that residence, you just got to do what you got to do. Right. You just can't get caught. As an officer, as a police officer, in 2022, policing today, with all the scrutiny that's all the eyes that are watching cops, everything that they do, everyone trying to assume and blame and make everything out to be racially motivated. A cop still, when it's all said and done, a cop still has to do what he has to do. Just because I'm dealing with, if I work in the community and there are a lot of black folks and there's a high crime area, I need to go in there and operate based on the crime. I can't be going in there being like, well, I got to make sure that I'm stopping enough white people. Man, what is that? Like, honestly, that's just dumb thinking. It's just dumb. And I'm not trying to say anybody in the comments is dumb or anything like that, but it's just ignorant thinking, because you have to deal with the issues at hand. If you're policing in Chicago tonight, you're on patrol in Chicago, and over where the hood, in the hood, you ain't trying to be fair in your stops. You're trying to stop the potential criminal from shooting up other folks, from killing up other people. So the racial aspect of it, You just got to go in there and you got to handle business. You got to do your job. That is priority one. That is priority one. You got to stop the crime.
And that's what citizens expect.
Go ahead, Corey.
No, I was just going to say that's what citizens expect. They expect the police officer to do their job. You're not, when we go on stops, when we're stopping vehicles, I don't know what color you are. If it's dark 30 at night and you whizzing by me at 90 plus miles an hour, I have no idea what color you are until I come up to the vehicle. What am I supposed to do? Oh, my bad, you black. I got to let you go.
Yeah, I hit my quota of black folks tonight. I hit my quota of black.
You can go head on. It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. I hear you. And
like I said,
I'm glad
Mike.
Joined us.
Let me just say
this,
Mike.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Like we have said, I've said in one of our previous videos, there's one city that's predominantly black here. I patrol 3 cities. One is predominantly black. If I'm assigned over that area, when I do my numbers for that week, it's going to show that I've encountered more blacks than whites because I was in that particular side of town. I still did my job. I don't pick and choose. I like, okay, well, you're white, so I'm going to let you go. Or you're black. No, you're wrong. You're wrong. A lot of guys have what we call open door policy. If I was open that door, you was getting a ticket. And that's how it is. You have to leave race out of this stuff sometimes. Yeah, is there racism? Absolutely. Yes, there's racism. We're not saying that, but every incident is not racial, is what we're saying.
She says, O'Mac Hall, she says, do we look at, if I understand her, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Hall, but do we look at every neighborhood the same? Let me just, I know we're getting off the topic of search warrants here, but let me just answer that a little bit. Every officer, they know the neighborhoods that they work in. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They have an idea based on their experience in dealing with the people in their neighborhood. They most of the time know who is probably up to no good and who ain't. There's always some sense of personal perception in an officer's mind in patrolling his particular neighborhood. Now, if the person that he thinks is usually the one who's getting into trouble or who is, you know what? I ask my wife this sometimes. If you drive down the street, you look at that car and you look at that car. You tell me which one you think you might find something illegal in. Right. You know what? Sometimes she don't want to answer that question.
Right.
But as an officer, you got to answer that question.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So, and that's the difficult thing. I think citizens will have a difficult time grasping and understanding that there's always some sort of personal perception, for lack of better words, and what an officer does, or who they stop, or who they're looking for, or or anything. You have officers that go out there doing traffic stops, random traffic stops. You have other officers that will go out there and look for those traffic stops that they might find warrants or they might find drugs. You see what I'm saying? So we're not just necessarily blindly stopping people. Sometimes you are directed in certain areas. If you work on First Street and you know that 5 of them neighbors on First Street are on probation, parole, usually up in possession of drugs or something, or usually got warrants. We know that. We're going to look at those. If we come across person A who we have past experience that, yeah, he or she probably got something in the car, or they probably want it, or something like that, we might look for a reason to stop them. And I think people have a problem with that. Mm-hmm. I think most citizens have a problem with how officers do that. But
I think they have a problem until that crime comes knocking on their door.
Right.
When it doesn't affect them, it's easy to be offended. But when you're being impacted or your loved ones are being impacted, then it hits home a lot more, and then you're a little more open to the idea of the police. The police going in there and handling their business. I'm not saying illegally, but them going in there and doing what they have to do in order to bring that crime rate down.
Ooh, Tone asked a loaded question. And Omac Hall, thank you for joining us. Isn't this the first time Omac Hall joined us?
Yes, first
yeah,
time.
that was good. Thank you, Omac. I could. That's an unusual name. So if I said he, my bad. Forgive me for that.
I ain't gonna blow her up, but it's a she. We know Omac Hall.
We know
I'm really glad
Omac.
that she joined us, and I hope
For
she
real.
continues to join us on these shows. We love her input. Tone asked a really nice question. You know, now would you do the search warrants the same in Calabasas as you would in South Central? Would you do the same search warrant the same in a rich neighborhood? I hate to say rich because it's really all about class. Would you do a search warrant the same in that rich neighborhood that you would a neighborhood that is usually high in crime? Or let's use it that way. A lower crime neighborhood versus a high crime neighborhood. Yes, folks, there are neighborhoods that usually have high crime. There are neighborhoods that usually have low crime. Would you do a search warrant the same in both? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. A search warrant is a
process. The process is still the same. You still need those. You still need those elements. You still need that probable cause. You still need to outline what it is that you're specifically looking for. It's not based on wealth. Your search warrant, your write-up is not based on, well, these are black folks or these are white. No, you go on in there with that same element of surprise. You don't know what you're going to get. And sometimes, to be honest, a lot of these execution of search warrants in wealthy neighborhoods, you find some stuff in there that just really blows you away.
And let me tell you, if I do a search warrant, I'm the guy in that search warrant, and I enter that house of a low crime area, and the guy raises up with a gun on me, I'm gonna shoot. Okay, I don't care whether it's a low crime neighborhood or a high crime neighborhood. If I'm doing a search warrant there's a reason why I'm doing a search warrant there.
Absolutely,
I'm doing it. It's a procedure. I'm methodically doing that search warrant the way I would do it, no matter where I am. Because
as we said earlier, Mac,
I'm sorry, Corey. Let me just finish this thought.
As
officers, we always have to think tactically. We always have to think officer safety, no matter where we are.
Yeah. And what we had said earlier, Mac, when these warrants are being executed, you're going into some bad houses. If you have a search warrant for that house, it's a bad house. No matter if it's in Beverly Hills or it's down in South Central, it's a bad. You're going in there to get some stuff out of there.
Especially a no-knock warrant. No-knock warrant.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's that. I mean, what do you think about it? Where do you stand with the no-knock warrants?
I wish Omac would have joined us a little earlier, because I really would like to get a take on no-knock search warrants and whether or not I don't know.
Yeah, I think the conversation was deep enough. She goes back and checks it out. I think
Omac definitely watched the show earlier when he started. As you know, you can see it, and we get into a lot about no-knock search warrants and whether or not there's still something that we should be using today. And I'm curious to know, you need to make a comment to us, Ms. Hall, because I'm curious to know what your mindset would be on no-knock search warrants. That's all. Thanks for joining us, though.
Yeah, we'd like to thank everybody for joining us, man. We're an hour and a half into this. Great conversation, man. So we thank you all for joining us tonight. She said she just rolled onto the show.
All right.
But we thank you
check it out from the beginning there, Ms. Hall. I'm sorry, Mrs. Hall.
Check it out from the very beginning. And if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button over there and subscribe to us. And if you're on Facebook, do the same. We greatly appreciate it. Eric, we thank you for joining us tonight,
thanks,
man.
Eric. Appreciate
it was a
Make
blessing.
sure you check out Code Red on YouTube. Okay, Code Red Conversations. There's some good stuff on there.
Yeah, I'll drop his link in the bottom of our channel here. So
appreciate that, fellas.
Subscribe to him, man, and we're definitely gonna do this again. Ain't gonna go another year without doing it.
No, we ain't doing that for real, man. I'm gonna have to have y'all come on my show
Absolutely.
We got our schedule. Y'all come on, and man, we can. Man, we gotta get this message out there, man. I think that this was one of the most thoughtful discussions I've had on a recent incident. Just 3 cops getting together and just chopping up something that even I thought was more controversial, and it still is. I'm not trying to ignore that, but just as we discussed it and talked about it, it just gave me a bit of a different perspective, man. I mean, I was really kind of like, I don't know, but now I'm like, I mean, we just really unpacked a lot, and hopefully our audience thought the same.
Yeah. So, hey, if you like this, go ahead again. I'm just keep saying so we can get this message out, man, because I want some more people to join these conversations. Next week, we got a special show. Next week is Valentine's Day, which is Monday, but the show will be on Thursday the 17th. We have 2 very, very special guests that are going to join us next week. And I'm psyched about that. I won't disclose who they'll be, but I think it will be great for a lot of ladies to join in on this. We can definitely give you a different perspective of what involves the livelihood of a police officer. Well, I'm just go ahead and let the cat out the bag, Mike. We're going to have our wives on, and we're going to give you a different perspective of what a wife goes through on a day-to-day basis of being married to a police officer. What's it like on them?
Let's hope my wife's in a good mood at that point. I think she's gonna be good, but I don't know.
Q better be on her best behavior, man.
I don't know. We'll see. But anyway.
So again, thank y'all for joining us tonight. Eric, thanks again. We'll put your link down below so people can subscribe to you. Code Red Conversations. Check him out. He's got a lot of great videos on there. Down to earth brother. And he's going to talk to you just like we talk to y'all. So we love y'all. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. Mac, check out our videos. All right, or I'm going to come up there and get you.
Good to see you, Mac.
Yeah, everybody, thank you for joining us. Katrina, Frank, Tone, Blackjack. Thank all y'all, Stacy, Matt, everybody. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We appreciate it. We love you, and we will see y'all next week.
Peace out.